Okay, today I want to talk about APIs. What exactly is an API? Now, this is something when you first start programming with any sort of web technology, you're going to be running into this. Now, APIs aren't exclusive to web programming, but it's something that you use a lot when you are programming for the web, or mobile for that matter. So, API, what does it stand for? It stands for Application Programming Interface. Big fancy words. What does that mean? Well, in a nutshell, it is simply some code that you didn't write yourself, and that code has some methods that you are allowed to call on. The code could be something that you download and you run from your own computer, or it could be something that's someplace else on the web. I've created a little pretend API here, and this is a remote API, so something that you would use JavaScript and you'd make an XML HTTP request or a fetch request, some sort of AJAX technology. You're going and fetching some data from some other point. And the only way you can get the data is if you follow the steps that are required. So I have three endpoints here. There's one called getUsers. This one returns to me, I'll zoom in a little bit here, make it a little bit easier to read. This one returns an array called users. So there's one main object that wraps around everything, and inside of here I'm getting back an array called users, and it is an array of objects. Every one of the objects has an ID, a first property, a last property, and an email property. That's all this does. And this is a pretend API because all this data is hard-coded. I'm just requesting these static JSON files. Now, these files could be written with PHP or Node.js or Ruby or any manner of programming languages. I just need to know what is the URL that I'm supposed to make the request to, and are there any parameters that I have to send? Maybe there's query string parameters that I have to add. At the very end here, if I put ID equals 123, maybe this page required me to send an ID. Maybe the root of this whole thing. Maybe inside of here I would say question mark type equals users, and I would send that request. Now, this is the page that I'm requesting. That's the page that I'm getting back. And then the query string allows me to send extra data. There's a number of different ways that you can send data to the server. You can specify whether it's HTTP or HTTPS, or maybe it's a WebSocket. You can specify different ways of sending it. There's things called HTTP methods, post, get, put, delete. There's a bunch of others as well. You can use those different methods to imply what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Sometimes there will be extra parameters. So maybe at the end here, I have to put in a number like this. Instead of with a query string, it's part of the URL. Now, I'm going to get a 404 error because I don't have something that's expecting that data. But these are all just simple examples of what you would be doing with a remote API. You're making a request from the browser off to this application programming interface. The interface requires you to ask for specific things. What's the name of the page you want? Use this method, use get or use post. Make sure you provide a user ID, or maybe there's a token, a string that's going to identify who you are. So those are the remote APIs. You can also have APIs that are local on your computer. So I've built a pretend API here locally on my own computer, and we could say that the contents of this file are just a JavaScript file that I've downloaded, I've saved it into a local folder, and when I run my web pages, I'm able to use this bit of code. If I open that up, you can see that this is, well, right here. There's the starting brace, the ending brace, and parentheses at the end here. This is an immediately invoked function expression. This is going to run itself, and at the very bottom, it's going to return an object. And the object that it's returning has inside of it three properties, prop 1, prop 2, prop 4, and then there's 4 others, AA, CA, JA, KA. These last 4 are all functions. These 3 right here up at the top. Number 1's a string, number 2 is a number, number 4 is also a number. It's the timestamp for the moment right now that this code runs. We've got a Boolean and we've got an array. Now there's 5 properties here, but I'm only returning 3 of them. That means inside the object API, that's what my variable is here, I can reference number 1, 2, and 4, but I can't get to number 3 and 5 because they weren't returned when this function ran. Same thing here. I've got AA, CA, EA, or sorry, AA, CA, JA, and KA. So the last 2, and then AA and CA. Now AA is also going to run the function BA. I can't call it myself directly, but I can call AA, which will then run the function BA. Now, what this is doing is really just console logging out some messages. It's not important what's being done in the code. What is important is that I have an object with a name here. This will be one file that I download and use. It could be saved on a remote server, or it can be something that I download and keep with my files. Then, in my own script file, I can use that. So I can say API dot, and here's the things that were returned from this function. These are the methods that I can call. So I could say, all right, I'm going to call the function AA, and then I need to call the function CA. There were other ones in there, like DA. I can't call that one directly. This one would give me an error. So there's code inside there that's hidden away from me. I don't know what it's doing. But there are some things that are exposed to me, that are public, that I, in my very own code, can access. So I can use AA, CA, JA, KA, and the values for prop 1, prop 2, which is a number, and prop 3, which is also prop 4, which was also the number, the timestamp. So these are the things that are available to me from the API. The application programming interface. The interface part of it are these 7 properties, the 3 properties and the 4 methods. Those are the interface for me to interact with this API. Now, it doesn't have to be called API. It could be called anything at all. I can call it George if I want. But there is this black box hidden away from me. All I know is from the documentation it said these are the things that I could use. So I can use these in my program. And that's all an API is. Code that somebody else has written, that I have access to, that I can use in my own script to accomplish some sort of task. The API can be sitting on a remote server. It can be sitting on my own computer. It could be something that I have to use HTTP to talk to. I have to make AJAX requests to the API to get information back. But it's just code that somebody else has written to make my life a little bit easier. And that's all an API is. So I hope that helps. As always, thanks for watching.